Hey guys, what is going on? Jurgen from ZurGrinoSports here, coming at you with the February 5th edition of Smackdown Review. Quickly, before we get into the review, quick self-plug time. If you would like to support me and the channel, you can do so over at Patreon. First link in the description. If not, that's a-okay. And, be sure to leave your thoughts of Smackdown down in the comments below. And at the end of the review, if you liked it, please leave a like, subscribe, all that good shit. But without further ado, let's go on with the review. So that's not like a catchphrase that I'm trying to do. It just happened to rhyme. If it sounds lit, then I might make it a catchphrase, but I'll let you guys decide that, because it was not intended to be as a catchphrase, but it rhymed, so I could see why it would come across as such. But decent SmackDown, pretty good SmackDown. I liked it. Good return to form after last week's one-off awful SmackDown show, which just, I think, affirms my belief that Vince wanted a hands-on approach to SmackDown for the go-home, which is why SmackDown was just so garbage last week. But it was better this week. We started things off with a Roman Reigns promo, with Jay being back by his side. I guess his 2-week period of isolation due to his COVID stuff is done, so he's back on the show. Roman says that he's not a fan of, looking in the past and recapping, but to anybody who didn't watch the Rumble, he beat Kevin Owens like he said he would, because he's a man of his word. And he says that, that's enough of the past. Let's focus on the future, which apparently is Edge. He's the future by way of the system, because by winning the Royal Rumble, he gets to main event WrestleMania, and he asks Paul Heyman, who's the main event? Paul Heyman says Roman Reigns. It's just a natural progression that Edge would pick Roman. Roman says he has a couple issues. He would say, why would Edge waste his time on Raw and NXT scouting the competition when the obvious choice of Mania opponent is Roman, and Edge should be begging at his feet to be allowed onto the island of relevancy by Roman Reigns. His second issue is, why is Roman out there first? Where's Edge? Edge has disrespected him all week, but he was willing to let that slide. But are you going to make me wait, Edge, kind of thing? Heyman says that Edge is there, so Roman tells Heyman to get Edge out here. Heyman motions to the production crew, who respond to him, apparently, I guess, saying as he relays to Roman, who then announces that Edge isn't here. So he must think that he's a fool. He must think that he's this and that, and he's playing games with Roman. Why would you play games with me, Edge, kind of thing. The last man who played games with Roman was Kevin Owens, whose history now that Roman kicked his ass, and you'll never see him again. And then he says that he's gonna give Edge the only opportunity to give his decision by the end of the night. Like, he's pretty much demanding and telling him that is what he's going to do. So, strong promo to start off the show. Selfishly, I would like for Edge to face Drew, just because you could get Bryan versus Roman at Mania. But then again, Bryan versus Roman at Mania, I think maybe I would only have wanted that if Bryan won the Rumble. I don't know if I want to see Bryan in a Mania match for the title. I've said it a lot over the past month or so in the build up to the Rumble, but they're going into a Rumble this year where none of the current world champions should lose their title. So they're kind of in a rough spot of finding opponents for them, because they need somebody who can afford to lose, which, fair enough, Edge can afford to lose, and Bryan can afford to lose too, obviously. But they need to look for opponents who are gonna get people to want to watch the show. They're gonna have to sell that they might win, but ultimately they have to be people who can afford to lose, because ultimately they have to lose. Roman shouldn't lose the title for a long ass time, and Drew shouldn't lose the title either for a while. So Yeah, it's kind of weird. I do like the promo though. Building on Roman's character, he's a great heel promo. He's doing really good in his role, like I've been saying since I've started reviewing the stuff again. So yeah, a good promo to start off the show. Then we had Corbin versus Dominic with Ray. Dominic and Ray making their entrance. Dominic with Ray accompanying him, not a handicap. Dominic making his entrance with his dad. Corbin attacks them both on the stage. Attacks Dominic first, then attacks Ray and throws him off the stage. Then we go to commercial. We come back and the match has started. Throughout the match, they have camera shots going up to Ray at the top of the stage while trainers are attending to him. Eventually, he recovers while holding his knee and limps down to the ring. The match, for the time that they were allotted and given the purpose that it was meant to achieve and the things that they were supposed to do, it was a good match. Corbin, a lot of people again hate on Corbin, but I mean, like, you're getting worked because the dude's good. The dude's good. He's just working you. He's just fucking solid. He can work in the ring, and he's a great heel. And he made Dominic look really good. Granted, Dominic also makes himself look good by being able to do some of the athletic things that he can at his size, which is really impressive. Corbin did a good job of making Dominic look good. The finish ended up being they went to the outside. Ray crawled underneath the ring. Dominic went into the ring. As Corbin was climbing up onto the apron to enter the ring, Ray holds his ankle from underneath the ring, allowing Dominic to 619 him and then go up top for the splash. 1, 2, 3. Dominic gets the win. Dominic getting a win using some Eddie Guerrero-style tactics with Ray. I like that. I do like that. My only concern with this match is if they'll do it again and again and again and again for 4 months before it's done, because that's kind of what they've been doing with the Mysterio stuff since Dominic kind of made his way onto the roster, right? They had Ray and Seth, and then they had Ray, Seth, Dominic, and Murphy for like a year, and by a year I mean 18 years, and then they finally ended that, and then now they're doing Corbin and Ray and Dominic, and they're going to do that for another 18 years. So I'm obviously exaggerating, it's hyperbole, but I just I'm kind of skeptical about this one because I just don't know where it's going. I don't know. There's no like clear intentions of where it's going, unless they're gonna bring Seth back to do shit with Ray and stuff again. Please don't, WWE, please. But yeah, so the match itself was good for the time allotted and what they had to do. Corbin made Dominic look good. Corbin's great. And a singles win for Dominic, which was probably needed after the 2 losses. So for this week, like, it's fine. It's just as an overarching look on it and as a long-term view on it, I don't know where it's going, and that worries me a tiny bit. But we'll just have to wait and see where it goes, I guess. We had a Big E backstage interview where he was asked how he's affected, how his preparation has been affected for a triple threat, given that his chances of winning are decreased, given the nature of a triple threat match. He said that he's fought all his life, and that's what he signed up to do with the Intercontinental Championship. He said a lot more stuff, but it wasn't anything that was, too important to the point of the promo. It's he did the thing that a lot of great promos can do, where they'll pretty much have like one sentence that they need to say, but they'll get like a paragraph or two out of it in terms of what they say, because they put their own charisma in it and they put their own like catchphrases in it and their own spin on it and stuff like that, a little bit of their own flavor on the promo. So like realistically, like literally all of the point of his promo was, I fought all my life and that's what I'll do with the IC title. Right? Literally just a sentence as a statement, but he put his own spin on it to make it a good, energetic promo that fit within his character. So he said a lot more, but that's the gist of the promo essentially. Then we had Bryan versus Cesaro. I was really worried about this because I'm like, okay, here comes the 50-50 booking, and then Cesaro's push doesn't exist anymore. But Maybe that's not what happened. There was a couple shots of Shinsuke watching on from backstage. If they could lead to like a triple threat between Bryan, Cesaro, and Shinsuke, that'd be fantastic. I'd really like that. WWE, please do that. Whether it be on pay-per-view or on SmackDown, just give them some time to do a triple threat, and it's going to be incredible. They had a moment where Cesaro powered out of a yes lock in the match, which was nice. Cesaro had busted his head open previous to this, and Bryan did something that I feel like I picked up on. I don't know if anybody else picked up on. Because like it was visually obvious afterwards, but when he was locking in the yes lock, he made sure to wipe his wristband on Cesaro's cut to like wipe up the blood kind of thing. Like it looked like he purposefully did it, and I'm like, oh, is that what he's doing? And then he like kind of came away from it, and he had his wrist tape, which was white wrist tape, all red and shit from Cesaro's blood. So I'm like, oh, okay, what a nice guy. He's wiping up his blood. That's cool. But yeah, they had a moment where he had the yes lock on, and Cesaro like broke the clasp of Bryan's hands with his power, and then powered out of the yes lock, which is pretty big. I mean, not a lot of people power out of it like that. Like escaping a move is one thing, but powering out is another thing. They had Bryan get kind of frustrated with not being able to put away Cesaro, to the point that he brought out the stomps that he used to use when he was the Planet Champion or whatever the fuck, his environmentalist heel gimmick a couple of years ago, where he would grab them by the arms and just stomp the fuck out of them. He brought that back. Then after that, he was setting up for a running knee. He ran into the running knee, but he got reversed into a torture rack, which then Cesaro kind of pressed him and then let him fall down into a backbreaker. Then he did a Cesaro swing, and then from the Cesaro swing, which Bryan was like selling his back during the swing, by the way, he then went into a sharpshooter and earned a clean submission victory with Bryan submitting. And then afterwards, with Bryan kind of slouched in the corner, Cesaro went over to him, extended his fist for a fist bump, and then went on celebrating. So Cesaro now has 2 clean victories over Bryan in the past month, and a clean victory over a former world champion in Dolph Ziggler. Obviously, Bryan's a former world champion as well. 2 clean wins, like a clean win over Ziggler to the hardcore fan doesn't really mean too much anymore, because like we know that they don't really value him as much as they should. Ziggler is a guy who should be a main event guy for sure, or an upper mid card at the very least, but definitely a main event guy in my opinion in terms of what he can do and how good he is. But obviously WWE, the time passed, they're not going to do that with Dolph anymore. So to a more invested fan and more hardcore fan, a win over Dolph doesn't really mean too much. To a casual fan, it might if you bring in the fact that he won a former world champion, he beat a former world champion, which is why commentary is so important, because if they tell you he's a former world champion and you're not too familiar with the product and you don't know it's a work completely and stuff like that, you think it's a little bit of a shoot still, even though nobody does. But I mean, like, you have like inklings of like some of it's a shoot kind of thing. I don't know. If you're a new fan and you're turning it on and he beats some guy that you don't know, and you're like, hey, this guy used to be the champion, then it's like, oh, okay, so if he used to be the champion, he used to be really good, and then now he beat him, so he must be good. So it puts him over to the casual fans, right, the win against Ziggler. But to the hardcore fans, my point is the win against Ziggler didn't really do much to put him over to us, because anybody can beat Ziggler, unfortunately. However, 2 clean wins over Bryan, that's big to a casual and a hardcore fan, because they protect Bryan fairly, he's fairly well protected. I think he has certain measures of creative control now as well, from what I've read and heard and stuff like that. So 2 clean wins over Bryan, 1 a pinfall and then 1 a submission, which is huge. A clean submission is huge against a big star, like Bryan as well, like a resilient kind of character, resilient babyface character. So that's huge for Cesaro. I really hope they're pushing him. I think he signed a new contract recently, because originally it was up after Mania. I think I read somewhere on Twitter that he might have signed a new contract already. Hopefully they push him. It's long overdue. It's just like Bryan's Rumble win. Cesaro's main event push is 7 years overdue. Just give the man his push. Everybody wants it. Just give him titles, man. Give him the Intercontinental title after a little bit when Big E's had it for a little bit longer. Give him the world title. Build him up to be the one to beat Roman maybe at like SummerSlam or something. Just do something. Fucking please push Cesaro. Make him a main eventer, man. I beg you. He fucking should be in that position on the card. The match itself was great. Class match. Given the time that they were allotted, it was a bit shorter than I personally would have liked, which it could have been a few minutes longer if they didn't have one specific segment later on the show that we'll get to. You know what I mean? But yeah, Bryan versus Cesaro, great in-ring match, although it was short. Put over Cesaro really well, and he got the win as well. That puts him over huge. Then we had a Bianca backstage interview where they showed social media of her parents celebrating her win, and then the interviewer asked what her decision is. She said that everybody's been telling her to take her time, but if she listened to what everybody's told her whole life, she wouldn't be who she is, so she's going to let us know soon, is the gist of her promo pretty much. Which is fine. Backstage interviews don't really typically do too much other than just give a little bit of character exposition and then promote the rest of the show. So you don't really need to do too much back there. They showed a video package advertising Seth coming back next week. Then we had Ruby Riott with Liv in her corner versus Bayley. Billie Kay on commentary. When asked about how she felt about getting kicked out of the Riott Squad, she said allegedly, and she also said she was allegedly eliminated from the Royal Rumble. Billie Kay is fantastic. Have Billie Kay on your show every week and give her a mic. Throughout the whole commentary stint, Graves is encouraging her, Michael Cole is not, and then Billy is in denial about being rejected by the Riott Squad. The finish of the match comes when Bayley has a submission. She had been working Ruby's shoulders because Ruby has had shoulder injuries in the past. She had been working Ruby's shoulders throughout the match. She put in a submission under her shoulder. Billy gets up on the apron and starts pushing the rope towards Ruby with her foot so Ruby could, break the hold, which causes the ref to get distracted, which causes Liv to be like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "Oh, I was helping her. She needed help. She needed the rope." This distraction actually causes Ruby to get a roll-up on Bayley, but Bayley doesn't get pinned. She kicks out and then kind of transitions it into a move that I don't know the name of for some reason, but it was a pretty good move, and then she planted Ruby in 1, 2, 3. Now, I like Billie Kay. I like having her on commentary because she's fantastic, right? The match itself, given the time that they had, Ruby and Bayley knocked it out of the park. The psychology was there. The moves were there. The timing was there. Everything was there. Perfect. Those two can wrestle. Obviously, they're great. Now, my issue here is you're not really doing too much with Ruby with having her lose in a short match like this. You know what I mean? Because you can put somebody over in a loss, absolutely, but typically it's a bit longer of a match and it's a bit more back and forth than it was, kind of thing, and they have to be a lot more resilient. The way the match was set up didn't really put over Ruby in defeat for me, and that's where I have an issue here, because if you want to give Bayley a win to bounce back off of losing to Bianca and then getting eliminated from the Rumble, not winning the Rumble, if you want to give Bayley a win like that, you have Natalya and Tamina on your roster. Just have her beat Natalya or Tamina. Just have Billy kind of be like, oh, Riott Squad, they kicked me out, so now I'm going back to these guys, cost them the match, and then next week you can have her realign with Riott Squad and be like, hey, listen, okay? See what happened last week? I went somewhere and it didn't work out, but it could work out with us. Just have her just be the delusional thing again and be the overly emphatic and, it's not great. I'm not saying that's what they have to do, but just don't. I like that Ruby was given time, although brief amounts of time, to showcase her talents with Bayley, because it's a good highlight of her ability to the hardcore fans. But to the casual fans, it doesn't really do too much because she loses and it's not a long enough match to put her over on the greater scale to all of the fans. So it's I would have preferred if they wanted to give Bayley a win, just do it against Natty or do it against Tamina. They don't need wins. They're not great. You know what I mean? Well, actually, Natty is great in the ring, but she's also got the, charisma of a chalkboard, unfortunately for her. So, you know what I mean? Tamina's got nothing. I don't even care if I sound mean or rude or whatever. Tamina just has nothing that appeals to me as a wrestling fan. But you know what I mean? Like, just have her beat Natty or Tamina if you want to give her a win. You know what I mean? If you wanted to do the Billie Kay and Ruby and Liv stuff, just have Ruby or Liv beat Natty or Tamina. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I didn't see the need of having Ruby take a loss. The rest of it, I was cool with. Bayley should probably get a win after losing last week and then losing the Rumble. You give her a rebound win for sure. That'd be good. But I just don't like. I like that Ruby was given a shot to shine with Bayley. I would have preferred if it was a bit longer. It's just I'm not a fan of Ruby taking the loss here. Granted, Ruby and Liv, I would be really happy if they could go and win the tag titles. So maybe they don't need singles wins and losses too much. But they're not getting tag wins and losses either. At least they haven't in a little bit, but I don't know. It's not like a major thing. It's not like me being like, oh, this segment was shit. It's just, I didn't really think there was the need for Ruby to take the loss. Other than that, it was fine for me. It's just Ruby taking the loss in a short match I didn't really like. If they had cut a segment from later, which we'll get to, and then given that extra couple minutes to this match and then had her be really resilient and then have Billy screwed up for her, then maybe, because then Ruby gets over, you know what I mean? But like Ruby failing to capitalize on a distraction and then getting reversed into a loss anyways, it doesn't really do much for her, for me, in my opinion. The rest of the match, as somebody who's a hardcore wrestling fan, does a lot for her, right? Because it when you're a hardcore wrestling fan and you kind of understand it more than the casual fan, you kind of pick up on talent in shorter matches than you would have if you were a casual fan. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's just to get things across to the two different fan bases. It's kind of, difficult sometimes, but I don't know. It's just maybe nobody shares the same opinion. It's just me personally. I don't really like that Ruby had to take a loss. I would have been even more upset if Liv was the one taking the loss. But I don't know. The women's divisions on the rosters aren't big enough to really have people to lose that often, though, because it's kind of it's a shallow division. Although it can be a strong division, like SmackDown's women's roster. You have Bianca, you have Sasha, you have Bayley. You have Riot Squad. You have Carmella, who's getting better and better. You have Natty, who's great in the ring. You have. Well, that's pretty much it for the good people. Billie Kay is really good character-wise. I'm not sure how she is in ring now because she hasn't been in ring for a little bit, but I'm assuming she's getting better still. And then Tamina's garbage. But you know what I mean? Like, it's a stacked division. It's just, it's so shallow that you kind of have to have a revolving door of wins and losses sometimes, which is a shame. Which is why I think, I don't know if it would work in the current day, but like back in the original brand split in 2002, 2003, 2004, those days, when they had most of the women on Raw and then the women's title on Raw, you had a deeper division because all of the women were on there except for a couple of valets on SmackDown. Like Tori was on SmackDown, Melina when Eminem debuted, Jackie with Charlie Haas, and then I think that was it. Or Dawn Marie as well, when she killed Tori Wilson's dad through sex, because that was fantastic. But you know what I mean? So I don't know how well it would work in the current day WWE. I don't know if people would get upset that women aren't on both shows, but I think for the strength of the division, it might be better to have one women's roster on one show, and then you could maybe do the cruiserweights on SmackDown again kind of thing, or the cruiserweights on Raw and the women on SmackDown. You could switch it up if you wanted to, but just I feel like having one women's division on one show might, make it a little bit better in terms of being able to build stories more often and stuff like that. But that's just a hypothetical. Overall, though, I didn't really dislike the segment. It's just, I again, just nitpicking. I personally don't like the Ruby loss, but maybe they'll pay it off in the future. Who knows? Then we had a Bianca Belair promo, of course, because she has to choose who her opponent is at WrestleMania. She talked about how her life got changed by winning the Rumble overnight, how she's been doing press all week, how people she doesn't even have their numbers calling her phone, new phone, who dis, stuff like that. And she calls the Rumble choice the biggest decision of her career. She talks about Asuka, the Empress of Tomorrow. She's the Empress all day, every day. And then there's Sasha Banks. She puts both of them over. She gets cut off by Reginald, and he says, he could see if she chose Asuka because, she could beat Asuka. But, Sasha, he doesn't think that she can beat Sasha. He says that. Oh man, I'm trying to remember because I didn't take good notes here. I just fucking really hastily wrote my notes. My apologies. He said that she knows damn well that she can't beat Sasha because she can't even beat Carmella. Carmella comes out. She says how Reginald gets ahead of himself sometimes. And then she talks about how she's beaten Sasha twice. So despite all the hype around Bianca, she's certain that she could beat Bianca as well. Sasha then comes out. She says, with all due respect, Carmella, I'm looking to put you in the rear view. Look on the road ahead. Road to WrestleMania, double entendre. And then talks about how Bianca has her attention. She's been watching her recently. She lifted Otis. She did this, all this. She's the strongest. She's the fastest. But she's not the best. She has it all, but she doesn't have this, referring to Sasha's championship. So she says, to pick her pretty much, and then they have a standoff where she raises the championship, that typical one. Reginald interrupts. He's like, again, you can't beat Sasha, and then Bianca whips the fuck out of Reginald with her hair, and then that's the segment. So yeah, decent enough segment. They delayed the decision again, which is fine. They probably want to. I accidentally hit my mic stand. Excuse me. They probably want to try and get a Raw appearance out of Bianca before they have her decide. You know what I mean? That's probably what they are trying to do with that, just so she can go over to Raw. Maybe she'll show up on NXT because they want to, have main roster stars on NXT to help in the ratings against AEW, because I think that's what they tried to do with Edge. Apparently they did bad numbers anyways, so that's unfortunate. But excuse me. Yeah, that was something, dude. That was something. That was a decent segment. I'm not really too sure why they have Carmella still involved in the main event title picture after she lost 2 title matches in a row to Sasha. And another thing, so obviously, one way to look at it is they'll do Carmella and Bianca at Elimination Chamber to give Bianca a win on the way to Carmella, right? That's one way to look at it. And as much as that would be good for Bianca because Carmella kind of has some highly, elevated stock in the division now after her repackage and going against Sasha, at the same time, having Carmella do the job for Bianca would then immediately be devaluing Carmella again. So you repackaged her. She was really popular with the repackaging. Then she loses to Sasha the first time. Then she loses to Sasha the second time. She's lost a lot of her luster. And then now you're going to have her take a 3rd pay-per-view loss in a row after repackaging her. I don't like that. I like the idea of having Bianca win, in a mini feud that culminates at Chamber, and then you can build to her and Sasha, which I hope is the way that they're going with this, because that match would be fucking incredible. But at the same time, I don't think you should be using Carmella for that spot. You know what I mean? And again, this comes to the division being kind of shallow. It's stacked, but it's shallow because she doesn't really have anybody that she can go against. She already beat Bayley. You can't just extend the Bayley stuff. Well, you could, because they're technically 1-1, so you could kind of be like, oh, tiebreaker at Chamber or something like that. You could do that if you wanted. It's just Carmella's a heel, Bayley's a heel, Natty's a heel, Tamina's a heel. Tamina shouldn't be in any fucking prominent program ever. I don't give a fuck. Leave her out of it. Natty doesn't have the charisma to kind of make an intriguing match on the road to WrestleMania at pay-per-view with the Mania main event challenger, the Rumble winner. Again, Bayley just had a feud with her. You'd have to run it back. And then you have Carmella. So as a result of the division being a little bit shallow, you kind of have to, continue to devalue Carmella, which I think is a shame because I really, really like her repackaging. But just every week it's getting, slightly less. So, because I'd love to see Carmella win the championship at SummerSlam, or I was gonna say No Mercy. They don't do No Mercy anymore, but the September or October pay-per-view. You know what I mean? Something like that. That is a ways away, isn't it? Holy fuck. But I'd like to see her win the title and be a heel champion afterwards, kind of thing. Maybe what they could do is have Carmella lose to Bianca at Chamber, have Bianca win the title at Mania, and then maybe have Carmella win it off of her by cheating at the next pay-per-view, and then just have her be like, haha, you worked so hard to take your dream and I took it away just like that, and then have them feud. But then again, that doesn't really do much for Carmella because then she goes right into a losing feud again. So I don't know. I think unfortunately for Carmella, she's going to have to take the loss to Bianca at the pay-per-view, which again really sucks for Carmella because her repackaging is great. I love the repackaging they did with her. She's getting better and better in the ring every time I see her wrestle. So I think it's just a timing thing that's unfortunate for Carmella as a result of the division being a little bit shallow. But promo segment was fine. They're doing the whole Reginald's getting too big for his position, you know what I mean? He's just a wine dude. He just picks your wine for you. He's not a valet or anything, which Graves pointed out. Also, they dropped in that you can't even beat Carmella, which insinuates that Reginald sees Carmella as being less than Sasha. We might see Bianca versus Reginald on SmackDown coming up, which would be fun. But yeah, overall it was fine. It's just, I think it's unfortunate that Carmella's probably going to have to take a loss, and then, you know what I mean? Maybe they give her Money in the Bank again. Who knows? Then we had a little just brief segment with Roman and Jay backstage. Paul Heyman pops in. He's like, hey, it's confirmed now. Edge is here. They showed Edge arriving earlier as well. Then we had a Sammy backstage interview. Where the interviewer is calling him a thorn in everybody's side. He cuts her off, calls her a corporate shill, says he's been conspired against, and tonight he reclaims his title and status as the champion of the people. Then we had Gable and Otis versus Dolph and Rude. They had a little pre-match promo play by Otis and Gable, talking about how, after the Rumble, they got right back to training. They've been working on some of their own versions of hot yoga, downward dog, stuff like that. And then Otis ends the promo with "Get These Hips." There's a new theme for Rude and Dolph, which is interesting. Sometimes when somebody gets a new feud, it's kind of an indication that the management kind of are behind them. So we'll have to wait and see if that's the case, or if it was just them being like, hey, they're a tag team. Let's give them a combined, theme. Then we had the Street Profits show up in a mini picture-in-picture kind of screen, and then they cut commentary for this match specifically. They were talking about how crazy it is that they haven't gotten a rematch after their 312-day reign, blah, 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 blah. In terms of the finish, Otis tags in Gable after doing, I think, the worm or the caterpillar or whatever the fuck it's not the worm, it's the caterpillar, I think, right? He does the caterpillar, he tags in Gable, if I'm remembering correctly. Gable comes in. Dolph then attacks Otis on the outside, tries to get in to fuck up Gable. Gable reverses it, puts him into the corner, and then does a roll through deadlift German. But that little distraction allows Bobby Roode to, get the Roode DDT and then win the match for the Dirty Dogs. I don't like that Gable took the pin. and this isn't anything on like, oh, they show that they're gonna push Gable and then they're not. It's that I think Gable is literally Kurt Angle 2.0, and that you have a potential star on your hands, and they're not doing anything with him because he's a little bit short, which is a shame because the dude has the genuine background in wrestling, which is a help. The dude can go in the ring. He can be goofy. He can be serious. He has that it factor that Kurt Angle did. He is quite literally Kurt Angle 2.0, and they just don't see it. It's right in front of their eyes. They have a gold mine right in front of their eyes, and they don't see it. I don't know why he has to take the pin. I would have preferred for Otis to take the pin. At the beginning, when they partnered Gable and Otis together, I was like, okay, maybe this will lead to something. Gable and Otis break up. Gable is a heel, maybe, wins the feud, and then goes on to something else. And now it's becoming painfully obvious to me that they just put them together because they keep breaking up tag teams, so they keep putting singles guys together instead, and they're going to flounder, which is a shame because Gable is fucking fantastic, and they should be doing so much more with him than they are. Which is a shame. I don't have a problem with Dolph and Rude winning. Obviously, I think they're probably what they're going to do is have Dolph and Rude beat a bunch of tag teams and non-titles until Profits go up to, Sonya and be like, hey, Sonya, you said other teams would get shots, but they can't even beat them non-title. How about we get our rematch now kind of thing. They talked about how it was... it kind of seemed as if they had friends who were higher up in the company, which actually does make sense because last week or the week before, whenever the fuck the segment was, when they asked for the rematch and Sonya said, heal up, we'll give some other teams some chances and then you'll get your rematch, she was talking to Dolph when they were entering the screen and then Dolph went away. And then, so I don't know if Dolph was actually just talking to her and then they were like, okay, yeah, no, Dolph, you can just talk to her and then blah, 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 and they didn't know the segment was happening yet, or if that was an obvious thing and they're doing the whole, Dolph and Sonya had gotten together to fuck up Mandy and Otis earlier, and then they can, what I mean? So I don't know if they're doing that with Sonya kind of protecting Ziggler as what they're going to go with it. Sonya, by the way, didn't really have a segment this week, but she did fist bump Edge when Edge showed up earlier in the night, I think is what they did, if I remember correctly. Don't have a problem with Dolph and Rude winning. They're the tag team champions. Your champions should probably look strong. But I'm not a fan of Gable taking the pin. I would have preferred Otis to take the pin. I think Otis was kind of a flash in the pan. They had the brilliant storyline that they did with the whole, the guy like Otis who doesn't look like he should have anybody as attractive as Mandy, and then Mandy likes him, but the whole what happened. Mandy liked him, she thought he stood him up. It was Dolph and Sonya fucking around, and then they did the whole match at Mania, and then Otis imagine that match with fans, man. Otis would have gotten such a big cheer with fans. I feel so sorry for him, but I think it was important to realize that it wasn't him who necessarily got over, it was the storyline that got over. You know what I mean? Or at least it was him who got over as a result of the storyline, not him getting over as a result of him. You know what I mean? When people get over as a result of them getting over, it's a lot different than when a storyline gets somebody over and then they kind of go... Like, in my opinion, Otis was a flash in the pan. The Money in the Bank win was a huge mistake, and then they had to makeshift kind of try and fix it with Miz, which is still a mistake. Miz shouldn't be Money in the Bank, and I talk about that in my Raw reviews a lot. I think he's a bit of a flash in the pan, and I don't think he really needs to be protected anymore. I think you have, again, a star and, a diamond in the rough, a gold mine right in front of your eyes that you can't see in Gable, Kurt Angle 2.0, quite literally. And, they're not doing anything. So it's a shame that Gable had to take the pin. I would like it if Otis could have taken the pin. I would like it if Gable would be doing a lot more in general. But speaking of somebody who else should be doing a lot more, who in just hasn't been featured in months, Buddy Murphy. Buddy Murphy should be an upper mid-card guy at the very least. And I think with the right booking, he could be a main event guy. And they're doing nothing with him. But, it is what it is. Vince McMahon. After that tag match, we had a 33-year anniversary of Hulk versus Andre, which garnered 33 million viewers, the most televised, most watched match in wrestling history. They showed a clip of the highlights, and then they had Hulk Hogan cut a promo, where he shit on Andre. He was like, "Oh, that stinky blah 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 Frenchman Andre, I beat his ass, and now I'm talking about who's Edge gonna go at Mania, brother? He used to be my tag team partner. Whoever he chooses, you're in a world of hurt." Nobody gives a fuck about Hulk Hogan in 2021, Vince. Let it go. The 80s were 40 years ago, man. I know you're hanging on to the glory days because the numbers are in the shitter, but the numbers are in the shitter because you're hanging on to the fucking glory days. Move along. Move on with the times, man. Please. Holy fuck. Like, it was a short segment, but that could have been given to somebody else on the roster. Extend the length of a match or something, man. Fuck. Nobody cares. It's 2021. Fuck me, nobody cares about Hulk Hogan, man. And like a 33-year anniversary, who the fuck celebrates that? Who the fuck celebrates that? Nobody. You just did it because you wanted to. Fuck me, man. They had a little segment where Edge was kind of talking with Shinsuke backstage. No audio, but just the visual of them kind of talking backstage while the commentary was putting over the current match that was about to happen, which was Apollo, Big E, and Sammy for the Intercontinental Championship. Big E came out second instead of last. I have a problem with that, but it is what it is. There was a point in the match where Apollo did a triple German on Big E, which I popped for, as you know, because I love Germans. Sammy did a haluva kick to Big E in the corner. 1-2, Apollo drags him out of the ring near the end of the match. He's complaining to the ref, saying it was a 3 count. I think he was motioning to his, documentary crew across the ring that it was a 3 count. Then he starts yelling at Apollo, saying he shouldn't even be in the match. This pisses off Apollo. Apollo kind of gets serious, kind of punches him a little bit, and then press slams Sammy into the timekeeper section before going back into the ring, getting hit by a big ending, and then getting pinned 1, 2, 3 for Big E, retaining his Intercontinental Championship. Apollo looked pissed after the match and left the ring looking pissed, with Big E celebrating. Obviously, more shit happened in the match than that, but that was just the finish. That was just the parts of the match that I thought were fairly important. There was actually one thing that I didn't write down, but it was great, was Apollo did a moonsault from the apron to the outside on, I believe it was Big E. Before they went to commercial at one point, which was fantastic. So, this was good. I mean, Sammy was once again great in the conspiracy theorist gimmick. Fantastic. Apollo was showing a little bit more intensity near the end of the match after getting pissed off by Sammy, which was nice. I think they're going to do a slow build into him showing the intensity, and then eventually he's just going to fully snap, turn fully heel, and then just be like, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to kill you to win the championship because I've had enough of being on the sidelines, on the undercard, in the stands, in the back. I hope that's what they do with him. If not, then they just put him on TV with Roman for no reason, and they gave up on his push that maybe they were thinking about doing. But Big E retaining, I think, is the right decision. The match itself was really good. They got a decent amount of time. I think they got like 10-15 minutes. They got a decent amount of time. The right person retained. I don't think it's time for Big E to lose the title. I mean, he just won it a month or two ago. Big E should probably hold it until past Mania, I think is what they should do. So right winner. Apollo looked a little bit better. Sammy is doing his conspiracy theorist gimmick right now, so he can afford to not win matches. Maybe it would have been a little bit better to have him take the pin, but if they are doing the whole slow build to Apollo snapping and becoming a monster heel kind of thing, if that is what they're doing, then I think the pinfall being taken by Apollo makes sense. Otherwise, I think maybe Sammy probably could have taken the pin, but it's just a minor thing. At the end of the day. So, that was pretty much the main event of the show. That was the in-ring main event of the show before we had what closed the show, which was an Edge promo. He talks about how you can't achieve something you don't dream of. or something like that. And the last 7 months when he was rehabbing, he was dreaming of coming back home, of winning the Rumble, of main eventing Mania, of taking back something he never lost, which he believes to be something that belongs to him. So who does he choose? Does he go to Raw for Drew? Does he go to NXT for Finn? Does he go to SmackDown for Roman? Everybody he asks him a different answer. His family, different answer. His friends, different answer. Dude he pulled on the side of the street named John, nice guy, different answer. And then Roman interrupts him. And then he gets in the ring with Paul and Jay. And then Edge immediately is like, what, you had to Bing? You had to bring backup? Are you already sweating me that much? Because I'm here alone. And then Roman's like, don't worry. Without my blessing, Paul won't make a move on you. And then Edge is like, I can already see it. I'm renting space in your head already. That's why he's here, referring to Jay. Then Roman's like, Jay, I'll see you at the bus. I got this. And then Jay gets dismissed by him and Paul. And then Roman's like, okay, you've disrespected me, this and that. I'll give you this one chance. Acknowledge me as the main event, as the champion of choice. Say my name. And then before Edge even says anything, Edge kind of looks behind him. Roman's like, what? Kevin Owens runs in, stunner, walks up the ramp, and then Edge kind of slowly exits the ring, and that's how we end off SmackDown. Now, I'm fine with them not announcing Edge's choice this early. That's fine. I don't mind that. Sometimes it's nice to do it right then and there because then you can have time to build. For example, off the top of my head, WrestleMania 20, you had Chris Benoit the night after he won go over to Raw and then announce that he was going after Triple H. Then you could build him and Shawn Michaels having the tension because Shawn Michaels wanted another shot at Triple H after the Rumble, after the double the draw in the Last Man Standing, right, was I think what they went with in that Last Man Standing match. After they were so exhausted, Sweet Chin Music. So Shawn did beat Triple H technically, but Shawn couldn't make the count himself. So it was a draw, right? That was the finish. So they wanted to do, Shawn wanted to run it back with Triple H at WrestleMania, get, finally pay off that rivalry, 10 years in the making, whatever it was. But Benoit picked him. So then they had the whole time from Rumble until Mania because Raw didn't have a between pay-per-view then. New Year's Resolution didn't exist that year. They got implemented the next year. They didn't have an in-between. New Year's Resolution is before Rumble anyways. What am I talking about? But anyways, the point is they didn't have a pay-per-view in between, so they could just have Raws to build. So that made sense. You know what I mean? And then they went ahead and it made sense because they did the 15-man Rumble. Eddie wins the 15-man Rumble, so you can go to No Way Out. Bada boom, bada bing. It all made sense, right? Sometimes it makes sense to do the Rumble announcement immediately. And sometimes it makes sense to leave people hanging for a little bit, leave people waiting. Sometimes it makes sense to make it apparent that the person's choosing right now, and then you build from like the moment on, like they are doing right now. They had Edge saying he'll choose. They have Bianca saying she'll choose, right? And then they kind of choose for a little bit, and then they make their choice. Sometimes it makes sense to not, to wait until kind of closer to Mania to be like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm choosing you. It's circumstantial. So I think it's fine that they're holding off the choice being made for Edge. I think somebody told me that that the report that they read was that they're thinking of Edge versus Roman, but they don't know who should win. Edge should lose against whoever he faces. Edge should be a losing Rumble winner. There is no reason for Edge to win any championship at WrestleMania this year. As a result of the Rumble. Like, there's no fucking reason. There's no reason. But anyways, so it makes sense, like I said, for them to delay it, right? It builds intrigue. Maybe people will tune in to see who they choose. And hey, if you tuned in on Raw and he didn't choose, then you got to tune in on SmackDown to see if he chooses them. And then if he doesn't choose again, then you got to tune in on Raw. Some people will think like that, right? So they might get a couple increased ratings marginally as a result of it. So I understand it. What I don't understand is why Kevin Owens is still involved with Roman Reigns. We've had 3 matches for the title. Unless they're going to have Roman in the Elimination Chamber, but then that kind of it kind of undermines Roman's gimmick of being in charge on SmackDown because, if he was really in charge on SmackDown, if he was really the mafia boss on SmackDown, he would pull some strings which don't let him to be, don't, allow him to be in the Elimination Chamber, right? So I don't know. If you're building to Elimination Chamber, then fuck it, throw Kevin Owens in there. He's a main eventer, sure. You can have Adam Pearce be like, okay, listen, Kevin, okay, I understand, it wasn't completely by the book. He had help by Heyman, but this is 3 title matches you've lost now. I can't just put you in here against him again. There's no merit. But what I can do is we'll have an Elimination Chamber and you can be in one of the spots. They might do something like that. But to me, man, it's dead. You know what I mean? That rivalry is dead. Roman got the 3 matches. He won the 3 matches. Kevin Owens got the 3 opportunities. He lost them while winning them. You know what I mean? It puts both over. They did a good job of elevating both. Just leave it. You don't have to dig it into the ground. You don't have to drive it into the ground. Just it's the natural conclusion of the story has been reached. Leave it. Have Kevin Owens go on to something else. You know what I mean? I don't know. So I don't really, depending on where it goes, you know what I mean? The promo was fine. I like Edge playing mind games with Roman, because it's something that, Roman's really good at being stoic and being fine, but because Edge is so experienced, because he's a Hall of Famer and because he's a veteran, it makes sense that Edge of all people would be able to get into Roman's head a little bit. So I don't have a problem with that. I think that's fine. I think that builds intrigue for their match if that's what they go for. So what I'm worried that they're going to do is that they're going to do the fall of the Roman Empire, right? The whole mafia boss thing that he's doing. I fear that they're going to do the cracks are starting to show with him not being able to get out of the chamber, and then the Empire falls with Edge winning. I fear that that's the story that they're going to tell. I hope that's not what the story that they're going to tell is. I really, really do. Again, Edge, I love you, my guy, but check the year. You shouldn't be a world champion in the current year or in the next year or the year after that for eternity, okay? Just point blank period. You shouldn't be. That's another person's spot on the card. Whatever. If you're there to put somebody over to the casual fans, yeah, I get it. That's fine. To win a title, why? You're just taking somebody else's spot. So the promo's fine. Teasing Edge and Roman, completely fine with it. That'll be a good way to go. They could tell a great story that way. Whatever. That's fine, as long as Roman wins. If they go Drew and Edge, they could tell a great story there that way. Whatever. Fine, as long as Drew wins. I just don't like that Kevin Owens is still involved with Roman. It's done. The only way I'll be like, okay, fine, it makes sense, is if next week Kevin Owens is like, hey, I want more of Roman, and then Pierce is back or Sonya is back, and she's like, hey, can't do that, but Chamber though, you know what I mean? Yeah, fine, but then that undermines Roman's character. So I really don't see the need of having Kevin Owens involved with Roman still. For me, the storyline reached its natural conclusion and it's done, honestly. But I don't know. We'll have to see how it pans out. Overall, though, it's not a bad segment. It's just a minor thing that I don't understand why they have Kevin Owens in there for unless again. The only way it's kind of okay is if they do Chamber, but then again, Chamber with Roman in it undermines his character. So, it's kind of like you give up one to do the other kind of thing. But it is what it is. Overall, though, the segment was fine. I like the intention of the segment with Edge and Roman. Overall a good SmackDown. I didn't have any major issues with it other than Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan I had a major issue with. I had a small issue with Ruby taking the pin. I had a small issue with the fact that Carmella will likely have to take a loss at the Chamber pay-per-view just as a result of how shallow the women's division is. Although it is stacked, it's shallow. And then, I don't really like Kevin Owens still being involved. But other than that, I mean, the show was good. Oh, also Otis not taking the pin instead of Gable, I was peeved by. But overall, it's a good show. Maybe like an 8 out of 10, maybe a 7.5, 8 out of 10. Like a good show. There was nothing majorly wrong with it in my opinion. Other than, again, Hulk Hogan, like I said, just minor grievances, just personal preferences kind of thing, that kind of were annoying me a little bit. So yeah, like 8 out of 10, sure. 8 out of 10 show, 7.5, 8 out of 10 Smackdown. I think so. Let me know what you guys thought of the show down below in the comments. If you'd like to support me in the channel, you can do so over at Patreon, first link in the description. If not, that's A-OK. If you'd like to check out some of the other shit I do on the channel, which is primarily gameplay stuff, you could do so at the end cards at the end of the video, as there will be a couple links to some playlists that I do there. If you would like to see how I would book a general manager, or sorry, a wrestling show, it's not, you know, if you're like, oh, this guy, you know, he just critiques wrestling booking, but he'd never actually book a show, I somewhat do in my GMO series. I actually book storylines in that, even though I can't, you know, cut promos and shit in the game because they're old games. I do write the storyline. So if you'd like to see how I would book a show, then you can do that in that series specifically. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, you can do so in the description. Be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Ooh, I'm having a stroke. Never miss an episode because YouTube likes to zuck your boy and not put my videos in your sub boxes. So by pressing that nice old bell icon, you will get a push notification anytime I do upload, and you'll never have to miss it. Be sure to sponsor me, Peasty. Got to beg for that sponsorship, you know what I'm saying. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe, share it to all your friends, comment down below, all that good shit. And I'll see you guys next time.